College football nerds here talking Texas and Oklahoma. And I got Josh with me getting nerdy as usual. And look, Josh, we were talking about this right before we looked at the model. The model's very interesting. You're going to get into it in a minute. Before we look at the model, let's talk about Vegas. Vegas has got this game 6.5 point favorite for Texas. And I think some of this, it's interesting because Vegas has it at this number and Dillon Gabriel might not play. And we saw what, the backup quarterback situation is like at Oklahoma. And we know that, Quinn Ewers might play in this game as well, which gives a huge potential disparity in quarterback for both of these games. But I want you to talk through maybe what Vegas is picking up after Oklahoma just got absolutely destroyed by TCU. And Texas won really comfortably against West Virginia. What is Vegas picking up with the fact that Dillon Gabriel might not even play and it's still only a 6.5 point spread?
There's just so many factors here that are really tough to get a gauge on with both teams. Texas's defense has been very up and down. At times they've been look like a good unit that has 5 stars. The defensive line has a lot of potential, but they've also been run on some. West Virginia last week wasn't overly successful, but they did have some success running the football. Defensively in the secondary, they've had games where they look great. They've had games where they look less than great. A couple weeks ago against Texas Tech, they had some gaffes. Yet Alabama, West Virginia, they looked fantastic. So I think the truth of the matter is you don't know who you're going to get. Do you get an Oklahoma defense that I don't think is very good, but against TCU, they were horrid, and they were out of position, and they were busting coverage, and they were taking terrible angles constantly. And I don't know. Do you get Hudson Card that played really good football, or do you get a Hudson Card that sometimes has been a very ineffective quarterback and been an inconsistent quarterback? Do you get Quinn Ewers? It's hard to think of a game in recent memory where I knew as little about who was going to play and how they were going to play. I don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be as of Sunday for either team. Kind of funny that we're doing this one, and then we did a video on Alabama and Texas A&M, had the same set of comments. So there's a million things lying out there confused and in the open. But I will say this, even though Oklahoma a couple weeks ago was the higher ranked team, the more I dig into it, the more I look at the stats, the more I look at their performances in recent weeks, it feels like Texas should be favored by a lot more. I mean, they've got the more talented defense. Their offense seems to have things together more. I think it says a lot about Oklahoma's potential, a lot about how much Vegas seems to think that Oklahoma-TCU game was a meltdown, that Oklahoma's that close, and they seem to think Oklahoma's potential is a lot higher. Maybe even that they were, I won't say sandbagging, but maybe overly focused on the Texas game. But it's interesting. It's interesting that it's only 6 points. I think it's interesting with all the momentum in their favor, even though they're 2 weeks away from a loss, that Texas isn't maybe more highly rated by Vegas as compared to Oklahoma. And you end up with a classic Texas Oklahoma game. Can't call it a shootout, but we'll kind of have to see how these two actually match up both on paper, and then we're going to have to see how they match up on Saturday.
College Football Nerds has a new sponsor. Josh, I wear shorts all day, every day. I wake up in them, I work in them, I go to sleep in them, and I need something comfortable. But even though I'm a dad, my wife won't let me do the dad kit thing. No cargo shorts, no baggy stuff. I got to have something that's flattering. And I'm 6'4", 240, and I could even stand to lose a couple of pounds, but Bird Dogs fit the bill for that. They're super flattering. They're super comfortable. Got a built-in liner, and I can wear them whenever I want to. Wife loves them. They pass the wife test. But, Josh, you live in a cold climate sometimes in D.C., and you can't always just wear shorts, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I'm also a nerd, which means I have no idea how to pick out my own clothing. So when Bird Dog sent us a sample of these, and I'm currently wearing the joggers, what I discovered is that they sell a line of joggers. They sell pants that are semi-professional business pants that look nice. They fit nice. I'm 6 foot, a little too close to 240 for my height, but good enough that these things fit. They fit well. They have lined and unlined stuff. And I got to say, it's comfortable. It's fashionable. It's as good as that other brand with the Greek logo, but it's $20 less. So I've actually liked them enough that I've talked to my wife about buying more. And that has nothing to do with the fact that they're giving us a promo. It's just a good product and something that I genuinely would endorse.
So go to birddogs.com, enter promo code CFBNerds, and they will throw in a free Bird Dogs rope hat. That's birddogs.com, 2 Ds. Promo code CFB Nerds, and boom, free Bird Dogs rope hat with your pair of Bird Dogs. The most comfortable shorts, pants, sweatpants with built-in liners. You will not want to take these things off. And guys, we don't do a lot of Patreon or ask for too much. But when somebody supports the channel, we want to make sure that y'all do your thing and go out and support them. So go to birddogs.com, 2Ds, buy some good stuff, make your wife or girlfriend happy. Yeah, and I think a lot of people might be looking at that Texas or that Oklahoma TCU game and thinking, well, maybe Oklahoma just had a bad day. Maybe they just had a complete meltdown. And I think they did have a complete meltdown. But I think buried under the meltdown excuse are some real concerns for Oklahoma. They also gave up 41 to Adrian Martinez in Kansas State, which that's probably even bigger concern than because what they did against TCU was like they were messing up basic stuff. We hadn't seen that all year. But to not be able to keep Kansas State, who is a good team, down a little bit more than 41 concerns me when they're going to face a Sark offense that, as you said, and we were discussing this in the pre-record where we talked about stuff. Sark's a wizard at game planning, scheming, and even without all of the tools, because I don't think Hudson Card is an elite quarterback. I think he's playing pretty well. Even without every tool in the toolbox, he's going to put some points on board. He's going to find some points in this offense and put some strain on even a good defense getting some one-on-one matchups. So from that standpoint, it's a little interesting to me, Josh, that it is this close, especially if we get Quinn Ewers and Oklahoma's not got Dillon Gabriel. I could see this being a runaway, but maybe the model sees it differently. Talk about what the model shows, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, the model is a pretty interesting one because when it compares these teams defensively and offensively, it essentially says the advantages one has in one area offsets the advantages the other one has. Oklahoma is not a great run defense at 90% of opponent rushing averages. 88% of opponent passing averages is very average. So you have an average to bad defense playing against Texas. It's been a pretty good run defense. 76% of opponent averages. It's a good number. It's not an elite number. It's a very good number. 83% of opponent passing averages is a good number. This has been a good defense. But Texas's offense, I think they've been inconsistent, but they've been a little worse running the ball than Oklahoma's been, a little better passing the ball than Oklahoma's been. And, all across the board, it kind of ends up being a wash, but you end up seeing a yardage favorage, right? So Texas is 6.2 yards per play. Oklahoma's projected about 5.4, but the score is actually 29 all. And I will say it's darn close. It's actually a tenth of a point if you break out the way our modeling works. Oklahoma's favored by about a tenth. It's still a tie, but from a decimal point, it's slightly Oklahoma. The last thing I'll say with this, why this is the case, it really comes down to the reality of the efficiencies that Texas has scoring versus Oklahoma. So Texas offensively has been 7 yards per play or greater the last 3 weeks, Texas, UTSA, Texas Tech, and West Virginia, and they don't have a ton of points to show for it. For example, the Texas Tech game, 7.1 yards per play. That's a full yard per play higher than they're projected in this game here, and they only scored 34 points. And if you look at Oklahoma, when they scored 7.5 against Kansas State, they lost at scoring 34. But in other games, right, Nebraska, they had 6.9 yards per play. They scored 49 points. They had 8 yards per play against UTEP. They scored 45. Could have scored a lot more than that. So Oklahoma has been a little more efficient at converting yardage into points. Texas has been a little bit more prone to leave empty yardage on the field. Now, our model is not just like, linear points per play or anything, but I'm just trying to put into numerical sort of context why Texas, despite having this yardage advantage, is deemed to be even. Really comes down to the fact that Oklahoma's a little better at actual scoring.
And from a modeling standpoint, I wonder too, the West Virginia score was really misleading. 38-20 is a blowout, but Texas actually beat them worse than that.
Yeah, it was 35-7 in the fourth quarter. It was a 3-score lead from the beginning of the second quarter through the end of the game. The game was never really in any way close or in doubt.
And Texas really let the Texas Tech game get out of hand. They let that game get away from them. They should have won that game. And I wonder how much we're talking differently about this game. If Texas wins that game against Texas Tech, they lost on the last second field goal. Like if they win that game by 1 point and Texas is ranked because they'd be 15-ish at 4-1, we're probably looking at this a lot differently. And that, and we don't generally do it this quickly, but that's going to kind of lead me into my score because I think that there's an opportunity for there to be a huge imbalance at quarterback. I think that even if Hudson Card and Dillon Gabriel both play and are both healthy, I think schematically there's still an advantage with Texas here. And between these two teams, Texas is the only one that I've seen that can play at a high level against a really good team in Alabama. I think that Texas covers, and I think that they cover kind of comfortably. Give me Texas 37, OU 24. Tell me what you got.
Really makes me mad when I write down a score and then you pick it. I'll do the same prediction. I mean, my score was going to be 37-24, so I'll stick with it with Texas. I think if Gabriel's healthy and plays, this game could be a lot more competitive. If he doesn't play, it's not going to be. It has a risk of not being competitive at all. And we're not even really getting into what happens when Quinn Ewers plays. I don't expect Ewers to necessarily be as big a jump as some people seem to think. Card has played well, and the thing that caused Texas to lose the Alabama game, everybody talks about Ewers being hurt. It's hard to judge that because there are a lot of variables with Ewers. He was playing the 2 scripted drives they put together. Sark always does a great job with scripted drives. He got injured when the scripted drives injured. Alabama made a corner substitution, and they went from a guy that got burned a couple times in the national title to another redshirt freshman that has played really locked down since the Texas game and hasn't given up much passing. The Ewers to Card comparison's weird because I thought Card also played really well when he came in the second quarter. The thing that killed Texas wasn't really the Ewers injury, it was the Card injury. When Card hurt his ankle, that crippled Texas. And if he hadn't hurt his ankle, I think Card would have scored some. And that probably would have let him win. But when Card, whatever the drop was from Ewers to Card, the drop from Card to hurt Card was 3 times that, I think. And I think as Card has gotten healthier on his ankle and is able to drive the ball more, they get a little better every week. And I expect him to take another step forward one way or another. So I think people are really focused on Ewers and when he's going to come back. I think you should be just as focused on whether or not Card can get healthy because I think he's a pretty good quarterback when he's healthy. And so, yeah, I mean, I have this, I have this to be a pretty comfortable win for Texas. The public seems to be all on Texas, which really scares me. But the more I look at it, the more I don't really understand what Oklahoma brings to the table on paper, other than the reality that it seems like they always find a way to win this game, or they often have. But I feel like in what is on paper a dead even matchup, in reality seems like Texas has all the edges. But I don't know. Maybe our model says that Texas is the better per play team, but thinks Oklahoma can actually outscore them by some margin. And maybe there is something to that. Maybe there's something we're missing in the model. Maybe that scoring efficiency thing is a genuine, real deal issue, and then that's going to rear its ugly head in this game. I don't know, but for my 2 cents, I feel like Texas is the safer pick.
I will say that if Oklahoma can get anything in the passing game, then it does open them up where they're actually better than people realize. Everybody's going to be talking about Bijan Robinson coming into this game, and it's deserved because he's an excellent back. Eric Gray's a really good running back. And I think that, this is a Texas defense that has shown that it can be not great. Texas Tech game in particular. So one thing that I want to say, we do this sometimes where I say if we wake up and the team we picked to win loses a game, what's it going to be? I'm going to say that, 1, Dillon Gabriel was able to play, and 2, that Eric Gray runs for, $150 and 6.5 yards a carry, something like that, and has a day maybe bigger than Bijan Robinson is what it's going to take to win. If you see Oklahoma win in this game, what's the scenario you think would have unfolded for them to get that?
Yeah, I mean, they've got they've got a mobile quarterback. They've got good running backs. And you note Eric Gray, but really, Javonte Barnes was the more effective runner last week against TCU, right? It does feel like for Oklahoma to win this game, they're going to have to lean on Texas the way a couple teams have and get into Texas's depth and wear them down. And that's when Texas's defense starts to make mistakes. But ultimately, the thing that really could break it open is if they're able to make Texas's passing game uncomfortable. Texas has a great receiver in Worthy, and they've got a great running back in Robinson. I think Whittingham's played well, and they've got some other pieces. Roshan Johnson's good. But the way they're set up, even I think Jatavian Sanders has been a big advantage, but it feels like they can only ever get 2 to 3 really good weapons on the field at a time, like a running back and a receiver. And they have a hard time putting a ton of weapons on the field. And if you can find a way to contain those couple guys, you can do pretty well. That's where Sark's wizardry can or can't come into play. And I think a lot of Texas fans are frustrated because they can't always get the matchups they want. But on the other side, to your point, Oklahoma, I think, has more weapons. They've got a few really good running backs. Receiving core, obviously marvelous Marvin Mims. And then you've got Braden Willis, who had a good game last week. Despite the big loss, Farouk and on down the line, they've got a lot of guys that they can use in the passing game. Oklahoma can stress you in more ways than Texas. I think the ways Texas can stress you are harder than any particular way that Oklahoma can bring, but Oklahoma can bring more of them. So if Oklahoma can sort of lean on you and wear you down and get you frazzled, then they can start finding their ways to get shots in isolation, and they kind of get you off balance. Where with Texas, it's a little less getting you on your heels and more about just getting their matchups and popping them every time they get the opportunity. So that's my deal with Oklahoma. Is it's just about wearing Texas down, getting them on their heels, getting them uncomfortable, and just having the ability to spread the ball around, I think, is really the key for success for them.
Yeah, and look, Gray was not as effective in the last game because he got hurt, and in my haste, I didn't look to see if he's going to play this week or not. I don't think there's been a lot of news come out yet about what that injury was, or at least to the extent of it. So maybe, I think right now, kind of like the Alabama game or the Alabama-Texas A&M game, Vegas is doing a crazy hedge. They don't know what to think because they don't know who's going to play quarterback. They don't know who else is going to be available in this game. Oklahoma actually had a bunch of injuries in that TCU game. So we'll see. But y'all let us know in the comments what you think the score is going to be. And tell us who you think is going to play quarterback for both of these teams, because that's going to be an interesting one. Maybe even give us a different score based on which quarterbacks actually play. Thanks so much for checking this one out. Y'all have a great one. God bless.